Good morning, everyone. Good morning. We are here on week 9 of Kardec Radio on Ben Franklin's 13 Virtues. I'm going to be sharing this as I usually do. And we are going right up to week 9. Look how fast things go. Seems like we were just here. And let me just share. Share now. Okay. It's on my page as well now. So anyway, we are here. We have been here for 9 weeks talking about Ben Franklin and his idea of the 13 virtues that he wanted to work within himself. So we can actually make up our own virtues and look at things that we want to check ourselves. And we know in Spiritism, we have one of the greatest questions as far as how do we progress? How do we get better? How do we get to the point of being this person of good moral standing? And the best answer by Saint Augustine was that you have to know thyself. And that is why we're doing this, because knowing thyself, knowing ourselves, means really diving into our shadows as well. And I think it has to do, Jung would say the shadows, the things that maybe you have heard or you have really embraced, but you've never really worked with them, and that became a belief, and those became these shadows, these things you didn't want to deal with. And we always assimilate shadows with negative things, and for the most part they are, because there are things that you don't want to really deal with. You just want to kind of hide it under the carpet. And Ben Franklin, I like his ideas of this check every day, every week. He would check at the end of the day, and he would pick something that he would want to really see how he was doing. And that's the whole thing. That's exactly know thyself. Because we can look at all our qualities, and we're really encouraged to do this. We should really be doing this, but we should also, at the end of the day, look at things that, what should I've done different during the day? And that's what he would do. At the end of the day, St. Augustine would really reflect on his day and things that he regret doing and things that he should be doing differently the next day. And that's the same thing that I see Ben Franklin doing. He actually is going through this list and kind of putting a check on himself. How did I do on this? Do I have to get better at this? And he chose 13 virtues. So every week we've been talking about a different one. So moderation is the word of water today. First of all, a lot of people say, oh, isn't that the same thing as temperance? That's usually the first question I'll get. And temperance is the very first virtue that Ben Franklin chose to work on. Because temperance, it's really that one thing where temperance is not just avoidance of excesses, but it's really government. It's governance. So temperance would not be, well, I don't want to drink too much. Let me just drink in moderation. Look at that. Of course, temperance and moderation are seen as just about the same thing, but there is a difference. I just wanted to leave this clear because people will say, well, you're going to talk about the same thing. I may, but the idea is that temperance is above, because temperance is really mastery of fairness. Let's put it that way, right? If you have a temper, a bad temper, a good temper, if you have, right, the temperament of doing something, it's an inner trait to temperance. So you want to develop that inner trait. So temperance is not the avoidance of excesses, but it's the mastery, it's the governance. Now, moderation, you have to be careful, because moderation, who determines what moderation is? Sometimes moderation, one night of drinking, is a different type of moderation with another type of drinking, another night of drinking. So moderation is very good for you to, again, avoid extremes, but now it's avoidance. You see the difference? Temperance is really mastery and knowing the middle ground. Moderation is the avoidance of what is bad. So there is a difference. I just wanted to put it out there so we know that moderation is really avoiding extremes. Ben Franklin put it as, forbear resenting injuries so much as you think people deserve. Now, I like this because this, again, this came from Ben Franklin, and he's talking about forgiveness. And he's talking about forgiveness as the heart and soul of the virtue of moderation. So, even though you may have gotten hurt, even though you may have gotten to the point where you were treated unfairly, moderation tells you to understand the other part. You see, to get in a middle ground, to not repay with the same coin, as Jesus have said, show the other cheek. He's obviously not saying, oh, put yourself in the same place to get hurt again. That's not giving the other cheek, but give them the opportunity to know better, to know how to do whatever it was that they injured you, to understand that there is another side and you don't need to act that way. See, I think that's the heart and soul of giving the other cheek. People think that, oh, someone, in cases of, let's say, an abusive husband or an abusive person generally in your life, an abusive wife, whatever, someone that literally hits you. Oh, well, I have to stay in that relationship because I have to turn the other cheek. That would be literally turning the other cheek. That is not what is meant by forgiveness. It's showing that there is another way, showing the way of love, showing that there is goodness to it. Because if you hit back, you see the whole thing about an eye for an eye, but at the same time, it'll tell you to avoid extremes. And if you're in a situation that is an extreme situation, then you're also not being moderate. You're not really in a middle ground. So you should take yourself out of whatever situation it is that is bringing you harm. But yet, you can show the other face. You can show the other face of the situation. If someone injures you, show them that that is not how you are going to proceed. That is the whole thing about giving. I mean, that's enough to give an entire lecture about it. But also, the part of forgiveness that Ben Franklin talks about, and he had a lot of life. If we read his entire biography, there were a lot of moments that he was actually betrayed. There was a lot, and we know by the Crown of England, and he comes back to the US, and there was a lot of diplomatic arrangements that was done. And Ben, at the end, when he comes back and he embraces the cause, the political cause in the United States, he was betrayed. He had to really exercise forgiveness. And the way he did that is he did not allow his soul to get intoxicated by poison, by all the things that he was set up. So I like that. In moderation, what does he do? He turns the other cheek. He actually sees a whole different picture, and he picks to work in that path. So that is why I love Ben Franklin's virtues, because again, he's saying exactly what we say as far as these virtues. And he's not saying in any manner that he has mastered all these virtues. It's just that he's been working on these virtues. So why forgive? Well, not really because we deem the other person to be worthy of forgiveness or that their action was good, but because it's good for us. I like to say that forgiveness, it's really freedom from emotional prison. Because the minute that you're tied to any kind of unforgiveness, any type of anger at someone or at some situation that you have experienced, and many times with you were in the right, many times it's clearly that you were done injured to. But at the same time, you are imprisoned to those memories. You are imprisoned every time that you are angry, that you experience hate, that you do not allow that to come out of you. That is really emotional prison. So forgiveness doesn't free the other person from what they have done. Because if we know the law of cause and effect, and we study Spiritism, and we know that every cause will have a consequence. Everything that you do will bring you consequences. Then if you were not the one that has done any type of evil, you don't have to really get yourself so worked up on the consequences of that person. They will have to repair whatever it is that they have done. So forgiveness is really liberating your own body, your own mind, your own emotions from any connections to the evil that was done to you. And I like this Because if we think about it, it's not because it's good for them or for anything else, but it's good for you, for us. Because every time I have to forgive, I look and I say, do I really want to chain myself to what was done to me? Maybe something was done to me 20 years ago, and this person doesn't even remember what they've done to me, but I do. So I'm bringing this up to my present every time that I think of the event with any kind of anguish, with hate, with, so I have to free myself. And of course, there are so many techniques, there's so many ways to work on forgiveness. But the first step is to realize that forgiveness is good for you, not for the other person. And that is already, it kind of differentiates that, oh, I'm condoning what they did. No, that doesn't mean that. It just means that you don't want to carry this emotional poison, this chain to what was done to you. So, moderation, no extremes. If you don't forgive, you are acting on extreme because you're completely allowing yourself to be tied to the person or the action that brought you into this anguish state. Um, I like to always think about, also for us to think of, when we're talking about moderation, are you the one that are defining what is moderate? Or are you bringing friends and people that you love and people that may not even like you and ask them if you are being moderate? Because a lot of times our judgment of being fair is quite different of what really is a fair thing to do, of what is not extreme. If you ask someone, oh, do you drink wine? And the person says, oh, I drink wine in moderation. Um, well, I've heard that. I've asked that question to some people, that say, "Oh, I just have, a little wine every day with dinner." I'm not here to badmouth or to talk anything about wine. I have my own issue. I have enough of my own issues. I'm just using it as an example. But a lot of people will say, "Oh, I have some wine," and then I ask, "Well, how much?" Friends and whatever it is. How much wine do you actually drink? And oh, maybe a bottle. And you go to find out that it's, with friends and all of that, but they end up drinking the whole bottle through dinner, and that's their idea of moderation. Another person will say, "Oh, I drink a glass with dinner." Their idea of moderation is a glass of wine at dinner. But some people will say, well, just a little bit. Well, what define a little bit? That's why scientifically defining a term is so important, and obviously the scientific community. But if we bring this into our own lives, so it's good for you to check with others if you're doing the right thing, and don't ask people that love you and well, ask people who love you, but people who don't. They're not just there with interest, or they just don't want to just praise you, because that's very dangerous. You have people that just, I see sometimes someone that really doesn't like the other person, and the other person may look, maybe they got a ridiculous haircut, and they ask, "Oh, what do you like?" And the other person is so afraid of telling the truth, like, "Oh, really? She completely wrecked your hair. You better go back and say something." They'll say, "Oh, it looks beautiful," and then they go out, and everyone's looking at them. Of course, I like to use silly, small examples, but because it's from the little that we develop the big. So I like to say, ask, get yourself a commission of people that have different ideas. And when you ask a question, they're not going to straight away say, "You're right, you're good, and that is the danger of having too much power to too little people, because those too little people, too few people, let's put it that way, will have influence from people who have some kind of interest, and they're always going to say yes, 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 yes. So if you're thinking about moderation in your life, and if you're thinking, perhaps I'm not being very moderate on this end or on that end, let me ask someone for their true opinion. So at least you have a baseline of what it is, and work on moderation. Indulgence, we can think of indulgence as part of the forgiveness. And the Spirit's book, when Kardec asks what the true meaning of charity is, and the Spirits will answer, well, it's benevolence with awe, indulgence with the faults of others, and forgiveness of anything. So indulgence is really that part in which I like to say it's really compassion, it's really empathy, it's really allowing yourselves to be in their place and saying, well, maybe they did that because of that. Not jumping to conclusions, not jumping to judgment. So indulgence says, let me take a step back and let me try to understand whatever just happened, and not be so quick to judge. I'll give you a personal example to indulgence that I think fit perfectly. Um, I had a friend and I had invited her for dinner at my house. And I said that I would cook, and I said, "Oh, come on over on Thursday. We're going to be together, and I'll cook some delicious food for you." So I just said some, you just meet someone on the streets and you just invite them and say, "Oh, come on over Saturday night. I'm going to have some food. Just come on over." So throughout the week, I realized that I had another friend that had invited me um, to go out and have dinner with them. And I was in a dilemma now. And I said, "Oh no, I had just invited someone to come over and I would cook for them." But this friend actually owned, had a restaurant and all of that. And she said, "Come on over. Let's go eat at my restaurant. It's an inauguration. It's all free. It's delicious and this, and bring whoever you want." So then immediately when she said it, I said, "Oh, okay, I'm going to ask someone to come with me." So I text this one friend of mine that I initially had invited to my house, and I text and I said, "Oh, blah, blah, blah. I know that I'm not going to give her name, but I know that I had invited you to come over and have some dinner, but you are not invited. And you are not invited to a better deal that is going to this amazing restaurant, having this amazing food at one of my other friends that had invited me during the week. And the food is going to be delicious." Now, think about it. My friend read that text. What would you do if you read that text? You are not invited to even a better event that I'll be going to. Well, if you were quick to judge and if you had no moderation and understanding and of that there could be a different point of view, you would probably end the relationship with me as your friend. The problem was when I was texting, instead of not invited, I meant to say now invited. You are now invited to a much bigger event. You see, the text of not invited meant that I had invited her to my house, so I would cook for her, but now she's not invited and done. I'm going to this much bigger deal, food delicious, and she's not invited. Look how awful that is. But because of a W turning a T, this whole confusion. And when she used indulgence, now she was moderate to avoid extremes, to completely cutting me off from her friendship. I'm not saying that we should not get some people that are not healthy anymore in our relationship, but you have given them chances, you have tried a work relationship and it didn't work out. That's being moderate. But in her case, she could have just completely blocked me, correct? She didn't. She actually called me and she said, "Debbie, that text didn't make sense. That didn't seem like you. I don't think you would be so so not polite and do such thing." And then I read the text and I realized that instead of not, I meant now. And then we both laughed because she says, "Oh my goodness, so now you invited me to an even better deal because your food wasn't that great. So we're going to an amazing restaurant to have food together. And of course, I'm going with you." So you see, that's indulgence. Taking a step back, that is where moderation comes into play. That is where most of the time forgiveness is not even necessary if we understand that behind every evil, any weird act, there is ignorance of love. And once we understand that, we'll reach to the point where when Jesus was on the cross and some of his last words, and one of the sentences is when he looked at God, when he asked the Father, when he asked really God to forgive those people because they knew not what they were doing. Jesus understood that he was tied to this cross in extreme pain. And a lot of people that were cured from him, that were received nothing bad from him. On the opposite, only blessings. Jesus didn't want to compete with the kingdom of this world because he knew his kingdom was not of this world. Yet, all these people that injured him, his last act was an act of extreme kindness and forgiveness. Moderation. Jesus didn't have to be moderate because he was perfect. But what I'm saying is he was actually able to look at those people, not with anger, not with anguish, not with hate, and yet understanding that they were just ignorant and asking God to forgive them. Look how beautiful that is. If we can bring this into our lives and avoid these extremes, then we can truly create this emotional freedom from anything that brings toxins to our bodies and our soul. Thank you, everyone. I hope that I was able to bring a message a little bit across, um, bring across this message a little bit, and in the vision of what is good for us, what is good for all of us. And let's try to work this moderation. Let's ask someone who's close to you now if you are being fair in different situations, if you're being moderate in certain situations. It's very afraid when we allow ourselves to dictate what is moderate without asking a broader um, range of people. Thank you, and I see you on week 10 next week. We'll talk about a different topic. Thank you. Have a wonderful Sunday.